Hakadosh Boker Tov Masechet Ketubot Daf Zayin Amud Aleph 27a1. We are by the Mishnah in midway down the page. The Mishnah says Ir Shekavshua Karkom. Right? What does that mean? When you have a city that was conquered by Chayalim. Yeah, they were conquered by soldiers, which were going around the city. They were doing a siege. So now it was conquered. Kol kohanot shenimtzeu betocha pesulot. All the kohanot which are found inside of the city are prohibited. Yeah, so he says why? Because we suspect that they have relations with them. But if they have witnesses that did not do anything, and that means that they were not violated. Afilu eved va'afilu shivcha. Whether we're talking about an eved or a shivcha, that means even these are the witnesses. They're going to be believed, right? But nobody's going to be believed for themselves. We have a contradiction. Baleshet is a tzava sheba la'id. These are armies. These are like the armies that they come to the city. B'shat shalom, if they come during the time that there's peace, chaviot ptuchot asurot. So then the chaviot ptuchot are going to be prohibited. Why? They probably touch the wine. It's a time of peace, but they're going from city to city. You know, sometimes the soldiers, they have to go from one place to another place. So therefore, the open barrels of wine are prohibited because they probably had a time to have a good drink. Stumot, but if it's a closed barrel, so it's going to be permitted. Why? Because they didn't open up the barrel. It's a closed barrel. So therefore, it's not yain nesech. Peshat milchama, but if it's a time of war, elu va'elu mitorot, everything's permitted. Why? If which means if they're busy during war, right? Yeah. So that means if they're busy during war, so therefore they don't have time to make yain nesech. So if they don't have time to make yain nesech, how do they have time to come and start violating a woman? They have no time. Amar Rav Mari, says Rav Mari, livol yesh pnai, lenasech em pnai. He says no. To make yain nesech, they don't have time. But to have relations, to violate a woman, they do have time. That's what the Gemara answers. Right? Exactly. Right? That means for them, they have this concept. No. They're not going to drink. They're not going to drink wine. But they have time to have the relations. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Elazar Mishmei de Chizkiya Amar. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Elazar says the name of Chizkiya. Kam bekarkom shel ota malchut, kam bekarkom shel malchut acheret. He says, no, I've got a different answer. You know what the answer is? It all depends who are the chayalim. Were they from the same kingdom or from a different kingdom? He says the chayil, which is kovesh, is from the same kingdom, right? Which is basically that they're going to be. So therefore, for example, the king comes and he's going to conquer a city. And this city, which is beside him, is going to be annexed to them. So therefore, they're going to protect it, right? Because of that, they don't want to destroy the entire city. They make sure that they're not going to touch the citizens. Because if they're going to touch the citizens, how in the world are you going to keep them under your reign? It doesn't make sense. You understood what happened? One more time. Here we're talking about, right, where they want to come and they want to annex the city. So Rabbi Yitzchak bar Elazar was actually saying something very smart, that if they're going to annex the place, they're not going to come and they're going to do something to the citizens. But here they're doing it from another one, which means that it's going to be, so for example, let's say you have a king that he's coming and taking very, very, very far away from his country. He doesn't want to come and watch it for himself. So for there, he doesn't care about what's going on in the city. So for there, we are going to suspect that they're going to come and they're going to do whatever they want to the different people of the city. He says, 1 second, how could it be, even if it's going to be from the same country, it's impossible that one person didn't run away and go in. That means what? You're going to tell me that nobody from the soldiers were able to escape and go into the city and do whatever they wanted? So maybe they went and they started violating the women there. He says, no, there was a whole bunch of mishmarot and nobody was able to go into the city without being, watched upon. So says nobody could fall asleep. What does that mean? Even if you have a whole bunch of groups and they're making sure that we're their soldiers and what's going on, it's impossible. Says Rabbi Levi, says we're talking about where they went and they put around like barzel, dogs, and all these other things all around the city. So therefore, if anybody would actually come, the dogs would come, the geese would come, they would start to, they would make noise. And by making noise, everyone would find out about it. So they had like a type of like a security to make sure that they made a siege, but nobody actually came into the city. Right? Because if not, then they would find out about it. So Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda says Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda pliga Bar Rabbi Yehuda Nesi Av Rabbanan. There's a machlok with Rabbi Yehuda Nesi and Rabbanan. Chad Amar, one of them said, Kam bekarkom shalotam malchut, v'kam bekarkom shemalchut acheret, v'lo kashi v'lo midin. There's no question, right? V'chad kashi lekorhani. But one of them, he started asking all these questions. Umeshani, and they did answer. Kegon demahada le'lemata shushita v'kaba v'riz abavza. That they went and they put all these things around the city, and therefore it was a good protection. Again, it was a good protection because basically they were just finding out and they were showing how, that they were not going to, it was basically they would find out what's going on. Okay? So Amar Avidi Baravi Nam Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Ashian. Says Avidi Baravi Nam Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Ashian. Im yesham machvua achat matzelet al kol hakonot kulo. Do you know that if they have one hiding place, that means they have one bunker, that one bunker saves all the kohanot. Because we could say that all the kohanot went inside of that bunker. Sometimes they have a cave, they have a bunker, they have a place where they go into hidings. That one place saves on everything. Okay? So by Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and they ask the following question: what happens now if the machvua could only hold one person? They have a bunker, they have a cave, but there's only one person that could fit. So what's halacha? Do we say on every single one, this is the one that went into the bunker? Or Dilmar, we don't say that. And basically they're all prohibited because it's only one woman could have been saved. So what do we say? So says the Gemara, what's the difference between two shvilin? If you remember, we learned this. This is going to be from Sachim, and this is Tarot, and we already learned this also in Yevamot. You remember the two shvilin? The two shvilin was you have two paths. Okay, basically what happened was two people, they went through two different paths. Echad tameh, one of them is going to be tameh. Ve'echad tahor, one of them is going to be tahor. Ve'alach ve'echad me'en asa, right, tehorot. Uba chavero ve'alach b'sheni ve'asa tehorot. So both of them did ta'arot, and they both went in two different paths. So imagine you have two friends, they went on two different paths. They both did taharot. Now one path is tameh, one path is tahor. Yes, that means there was a kever, there was a tombstones and things like that there on one path, and the other one there wasn't. So now you don't know who went where. Now they both dealt with teharot. That means they both dealt with pure things. So what are you going to do now? Rabbi Yehuda says, if you ask each one separately, we're going to purify both of them. Because when I ask you, I'm going to say, which path did you go to? A. Okay, fine, you're tahor. The other one's tameh. Why? Because you went in the tahor one. Now I'm going to ask him, and he's going to say, I went in B. So, okay, you're tahor, and the other one's tameh. Right? Why? Because I'm asking them separately. As long as I'm asking them separately, I'm always going to say that the one that you went to is good, and the other one is going to be tameh. But shneim ka'achad, but if they both ask at the same time, meaning they both come to the rabbis, and they both say, I went to A, and I went to B. One of them has to be tameh. So now you can't do that anymore. So then, tameot. Rabbi Yosef says, benkach ubenkach tamim, you're always going to be tameh. Right? Both of them are going to be tameh. That means safek. Ve'amar Rav Avitem Rabbi Yochanan says, and some people say, so Yochanan bevat achat divra kol tumin. If they came in one shot, according to everybody, it's going to be tameh. Bazeh achar zeh, if it's going to be one after another, divra kol teonim, everybody says that you're going to be tahor. Lo nechleku. So when is the machloket? Ela bevali shael alav al chavero. If you're asking for yourself and your friend. Meaning, according to everybody, if you came in one shot, you're both tameh. If you came one after another, you're both tahor. So when is the question? When you come to ask for you and your friend. More medami levatachat. So one compares the two. You're coming to ask together, and more medami levazachazel. One of them comes and says, "No, you're asking one after another." Right. So therefore, you come and you see from here, right, that this is like from the concept of safek tumam neshut rabim. Right. So now we come and we say, "Hachanami." So to here. If you're going to permit all of them together, so then it's like all in one shot. Because basically there's only one place of a hiding place. And if you're going to come and you're going to permit, it's like you're permitting everyone in one shot. So it says, can you compare both cases? There's for sure a tombstone in one of the paths. So you know that one of the paths are for sure tameh, and one of them is not tameh. Here in our case, whoever told you that for sure a woman was violated at all? You don't know. We're saying probably he went and he violated her, right? We don't know. So if it's not for sure a tumah, so how do you know that then? Okay, so that's why it could still be okay. So by Ravashi comes and he says, okay, fine, you're right. If there's a hiding place and we don't know who went in there. What happens in Mamra lo nichbeti? She comes and she says, I didn't go into hiding, but I wasn't impurified. So she comes, again, remember this concept. She comes, she says, I didn't go into hiding, but I wasn't violated. Do we say, right? 27b. Do we say Mali Lishaker? That why is she going to lie? Right? Because she could have just said that she went into hiding, or she didn't need to say anything. Or maybe we're not going to say anything. So says the Gemara, what's the difference between the other story? There was a story that who Gavra, the Aga lechamra lechavre. There was a person that he rented out his chamor to his friend. Yeah, he rented out his donkey to his friend. The Elmaleh, so he comes and he tells him, don't go on this path because there's flooding, there's water, so don't go on this path. Zil go the other place, but there's no water there. He went to the normal place, and it died. The Rabbi, he came in front of Rabbi Elmaleh, he says, I did go through that place, but there was no water there. So he had admitted that he went through the path that he was told not to go, but he said, but there was no water. So I went through that path, but there was no water. Amar Rava says, what's he going to lie? He could have just lied and said, he went through the other path. Abaye says, you're not going to be believed when you have instead of edim, which means, right, here, since b'derech klal, there is always water, it's considered that there's witnesses that there's water. It's a kilo that for sure there's water. So therefore, he's not going to be believed in a case when there's witnesses against you. Meaning, when are you going to be believed if there's no witnesses that go against you? If there's witnesses against you, you're not going to be believed. So he says the fact that usually there's always water there, it's like that there's witnesses that there's water there. So if you're not believed to say that you went there, but there's no water, it just doesn't work. That's a shita of Abaye. But according to Rava, he says, yeah, Malil Shakir. Right? Why would he have lied? He could have lied a better lie. So says the Gemara, can you compare the case over there? Right? Hatam over there, to do with the renting out of the donkey. But for sure there's edim that there's water, but there's always water there. Hacha here, it's not for sure that she was violated. Chashasha, it's only a suspicion. When we go chashasha, and in place of suspicion, we do say it. Meaning you can't compare. It's not like it's 100% that, like, for example, there was always water. No. Here, it's not always people are violated, but we do suspect that there are violations that occur, right? Well, that's what we do suspect. Okay? Fine. So now it says the two dots. The two dots comes and it says, even if there's going to be a witness, who's a witness? Even if it's going to be an eved or a shivcha, a slave or a maid servant, it's still going to be okay. Says the Gemara, even if it's going to be her own maid servant that she believed. Imagine right now you have a maid servant. So this is like, this is your cleaning lady. Now remember, it's not like nowadays that you pay them by the day and, they come in and out, they run away. No. A shivcha was somebody that was with you from when you were this and they're 20 years, 30. You're going to tell me that she's going to be believed? Obviously, she's got an interest. She's going to testify. Even her shivcha, meaning we have a contradiction. Right? It says over here like this. If a woman comes and she says that her husband is going to die, and he writes a get, and he gives it to her, that if he dies from this sickness, that if he dies, it's going to be a get, he should not have yichud with her unless there's going to be a edim. Why? Because if he has relations after he gave her the get, he annuls the get. And even if it's going to be an ever shivcha, except for her shivcha, which means that she feels so close to her shivcha, she's not embarrassed to have relations with her husband in front of the shivcha. So therefore, if she secludes herself in front of the shivcha, he's not allowed to get married. He's not allowed to divorce her with this get, because we're going to suspect that he already had the relations, right? When he was secluded with her, right? Why? Because we suspect that at the end of the day, that's it. Okay. It says the Gemara that even though we just said that usually the shivcha is not believed because she's so close to her, he says over here, Amar Rav Papa bishuya hekilu. What does that mean? Bishuya hekilu means is that the shuya, they were more lenient to do with a shuya that they believed even a maidservant, which means they wanted to be lenient because at the end of the day she was taken in captivity. We don't want to come and prohibit her to her husband. So Rav Papa says, Ha b'shivcha didei. It all depends whether it's her shivcha or his shivcha, right? What does that mean? If it's going to be her shivcha, right? So then there, in that case, we're going to suspect that she doesn't really care, right? But if it's going to be his shivcha, right? So then be'emet, right? She is believed, but her shivcha, no. So that means it all depends on whose shivcha is it. Is it the man's or is it the woman's? The shivcha didal lo mehemna is what? Her shivcha is not going to be believed. Haktani en adam ida latzmo. You're not allowed to come and testify by yourself. Hashivcha didal mehemna. So it's mashma you can't testify by yourself, but her shivcha is going to be believed. And so the Gemara, no, her shivcha is like her. Shivchata nami katzma dami. Her shivcha is like she herself testified. Ravashi Amar Ravashi says, ha ve'ha b'shivcha didal. Really, we're talking about her shivcha. The shivcha mixi achazia b'shatka. But the shivcha, she sees things, but she stays quiet. Meaning many times the shivcha will see something, but then she'll stay quiet. She won't say anything. Why? Because she doesn't want to say anything. So she keeps quiet. Hatam over there, the shtikata matirata, right, where her shtika is permitting it. Lo mehemna, it's not going to be believed. Hacha over here, the shtikata osarata, which is going to prohibit it. Mehemna, she's going to be believed, which means like this. Sometimes, right, the shivcha will actually see something and she's going to stay quiet. She won't say what's going on, what are they doing, not doing. So therefore he comes and he says, there where the shtika is going to permit her, right, to do with the get. So therefore she's not going to be believed. Why? Because we're not going to permit them to have yichud, because we're going to suspect that maybe the shivcha is going to see it, and then she's not going to say anything in order to protect her mistress, right? She's gonna keep quiet in order to. Over here, the shtika, she keeps quiet, is gonna prohibit her mistress. So then she is gonna be believed if she says it. Hashtanami sotu yiratim shaka. 1 second. Why wouldn't she lie? At the end of the day, the shivcha is always gonna have a tendency to say something for the good of her mistress, of her master. So for why in the world wouldn't she lie? She would lie over here. So says we're not going to suspect that she's going to falsely lie, because she's not going to do two things. Number one, she's not going to say that she was contaminated. And number two, she's actually going to testify that she wasn't contaminated. Meaning, if she keeps quiet and then she doesn't say anything, that's one thing. But she's not going to say anything, and then the opposite, she's going to testify falsely. There, a maidservant wouldn't do such a thing. Like, it's too far. You understand? But then it's mamash, she knows she's getting into trouble. Ki hademari, right? But Isaac, just like Mani Bar Isaac, there was a person that came from Bechuza, and he said that he's his brother. Elmaleh comes and he says, give me half of the property of the father. Why? Because I'm your brother. Elmaleh says, I don't even know who you are. You're my brother? I don't even know who you are. What am I going to give you? So give you half the property. They came in front of Elmaleh. He says, he told you good. Why? Right? I'm not going to suspect that he's lying. Right? Which comes to teach you. What does that mean? That Yosef recognized, but they didn't breathe it. He didn't have a beard. And then he came back with a beard. So therefore what? Just like right now, so therefore he didn't recognize him. So too here, your brother, right, doesn't know you, because you went when you were as young, and all of a sudden now you have a beard and everything. He doesn't know you. So Elmaleh says, go bring witnesses that you're his brother. Elmaleh says, I've got witnesses, but they're afraid. Why? Because he's a very powerful man. Meaning sometimes you have a case where you have people that are very powerful, so they're afraid to testify. Why? Because they know if they're going to start testifying, all of a sudden they're going to be taken down or something's going to happen. So so he went and he told him, so he went the opposite. He went and he told them, you bring me witnesses that he's not your brother. Right? So Elmaleh says, Dinachi. He says, what? Is that the din? The opposite. Right? Elmaleh, he says, no. Even though usually there's a general rule, what does that mean? Means that you have to bring the proof to take out the money from someone else. So here too, the brother that's coming from Honolulu, he has to bring the proof that he's a brother in order to take the money. But so then the guy comes and he says, so no, is that halakha? He says, no. But for you powerful people, that you come and you intimidate others, right? That you don't let them come and testify. So for you guys, this is the way that I judge it the opposite way around. You guys bring a proof that he's not your brother. And until you don't bring a proof that he's not your brother, you're going to have to actually give him the money. So so 1 second. If he's so powerful, also, Atum Meshakir, they're going to come and they're going to lie. He's so powerful, he'll bring witnesses, they're going to lie, he's not the brother, and then that's it. Says the Gemara, Tarti lo avdi. No. people are not going to do two bad things, meaning that they're not going to come and they're going to do two different things, which means that they're not going to say the truth and then also testify falsely that they wouldn't do. If they're not going to say anything, that's one thing. But to come and not say anything, plus they're going to testify, no, that they're not going to do. So says the Gemara, what did we just say? It's machlok t'tanaim. This is the testimony of a man and a woman, right? Whether it's talking about a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, whether it's a child and a boy and a girl, whether it's a father and a mother or a brother and a sister, and not the son and the daughter, and not the eved shivcha, and everyone says, except for her and her husband. So it's mashma, a shivcha is believed. So answers the Gemara that Rav Papi Rav Ashi here. You're right. The words of Rav Papi and Rav Ashi are actually tulim in machloket, and it's not actually agreed upon by everybody. Because they said that a shivcha, she was going to be believed, the maidservant is going to be believed on her mistress. It says it's not that true. But Rav Papa says, Rav Papa will tell you what, you say it's a machloket. There's no machloket. So Rav Papa says, it all depends if we mesiach lefi tumah. Remember, mesiach lefi tumah means she's speaking innocently, which means that she's saying a story. She's not testifying. Testifying is one thing. If you're just saying over a story, that's something else. Imagine right now you're coming and you're saying over a story. We went and we escaped on this and we went into hiding. So we will believe you because you're not testifying, but you're just saying over a story. So he was talking over Maaseh ba lifnei Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. I was captured with my mother between. Right, that's what he's saying. He was captured with his mother between the Odek Chuvim. Yatzati lishom mayim. Right, and I went out to draw water with a Elmaleh, and he was thinking about his mother. And he was thinking that means all the time he was always making sure that his mother was safe. Rabbi came and he got the mother married to a Kohen. Why? Because the son testified. Now, usually a son will never be able to be testifying about his mother, right? Obviously, he'll say that nothing. No, but why? He was saying over a story. And the fact that he's saying over a story, he's going to be believed. Says the Mishnah. Mishnah Kavzayin Amubet towards the bottom. Amar bi Zechariah ben Akatzav. Says bi Zechariah ben Akatzav. He was a Kohen, and to do with his wife, his wife was in Yerushalayim during the Churban Bayit Sheni. The second Bet HaMikdash was being destroyed, and his wife was inside of the city. Hamaon hazeh, he swears, Lo zaza yada mitoch yadi. So this is a big rabbi. Rabbi Zechariah ben Akatzav, he was a big rabbi, he was a Kohen, and he swore that his wife didn't leave him from the beginning that the Ovdei Kochanim came into Yerushalayim until they came out. Amrulo, they told him, En adam me'id al atzmo. A person cannot testify on himself, and therefore his wife is prohibited to him. This was you mentioned before. So you see from here, Rabbi Zechariah ben Akatzav, we're talking about one of the Gedolei Olam, we're talking about one of the biggest rabbis during that generation. And he went and he swore. He swore. It wasn't just some testified. He swore she never left his hands. Prohibited to him. Oh, that's the way it is. Says the Gemara, Tana, but even so, right? He used to come and he designated for her a house, right? But when she was coming inside, she would come, right? She would go out in the front of all her children. And she would come inside the house, she would come at the end of all her children, which means that since they were living in the same vicinity, so she made sure that whenever she left, she always had to leave first, and then the children came afterwards. So she would never be left alone in the house with the husband or in the vicinity with the husband. It wasn't in the exact same house. It was a house in the chatzer, in the same courtyard, right? And the same thing when she was coming back home, the children had to go in first, and then only she could go in first. She could not go in by herself. So Baya comes and he asks, can you do that with your divorced wife? Listen, it's much cheaper. Remember, in the olden days, they would have a chatzer, and in the chatzer, if you want, you just build an extra house. And now, a person divorced his wife, right? And for whatever reason it is, he puts his wife there, and that's it. But usually we suspect, because maybe we're going to suspect that maybe Bemet, he'll have relations with her. At the end of the day, here, it wasn't that they got divorced because they were fighting cats and dogs. They got divorced because they were forced to get divorced, right? But maybe Bemet, we're going to suspect that they're still going to have relations. So can a person do that with his grusha or not? So says the Gemara, Hatamu, it's only over there, because she was taken into captivity, that's why they were lenient. But over here, they didn't, we were mekel by a divorce woman. Or maybe there's no difference. So Tashema, the time was going to the right, It's written if a person divorces his wife, he's not allowed to get married to another man and live in the same vicinity as the first husband. Right? And if he was a Kohen, on the top, not only in the same mavui. If it was a small village, right? That a kfar katan is like considered like a shkuna. So basically, what they're saying is that it all depends on the circumstances. But usually, you're not allowed to live in the same vicinity as your divorced wife. Why? Because we suspect that you're going to do something, and if you do something, you're married again. You understand? So it becomes problematic. So therefore, a person has to be very, very careful with this. Masechet Ketubot Daf 28a1. We just said that if a woman comes and she gets divorced, so if right now the Kohen comes and he gets divorced, his divorced wife cannot live in the same mavui, which means that it's even bigger. Meaning, even you need a bigger separation when it's a Kohen. But remember, a Kohen cannot get married to a grusha, even if to a divorced woman, even if it's his own divorced wife. So he says, if it's going to be a small village, this was a story that it came and they said, Kfar Katan is like a shuna. And therefore, the entire village, you can't live in the entire village. Why? Because, right, you can't live in that entire village because it's such a small place. We're going to suspect that there might be monkey business. So ask the Gemara, who do you send off? They just get divorced. Who has to move out of town? The husband or the wife? Says the Gemara, Tashema de Tanya, she has to leave. And he doesn't have to leave. Why? Says the Gemara, but if it's going to be that the chatzer belonged to her, so then he moves. Meaning, if she's the owner of the house, so then he has to move around. But if not, she has to leave. But we're going to see why now. So says the Gemara, listen, we'll see. So we're going to ask the question, what happens if they belong to both of them? They were both owners. So says the Gemara, what's halacha? So Tashema, we already learned. She has to move. But my skin, what are we dealing with? If it's his chatzer, so obviously she has to move out. But obviously if it's hers, right? But if it's hers, we already said, he has to move out. Obviously it means that it belongs to both of them. And if it belongs to both of them, she has to move out. So says the Gemara, Dilma de Agir Megar. Well, maybe they're both renting. So my havila, so what's halacha? Tashema, Hine Hashem etaltelecha taltele gaver. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will move you around like the tiltul of a man. The Amar Rav says, tiltule de gavra kashin mi de iteta. It's more difficult for a man to move places than for a woman. So therefore, that's why the woman has to leave and not the man. Okay, somebody once asked me, how could this be? And I explained to them that it was very, very simple. You have to remember that in the olden days, women always stayed in the house. So therefore, it doesn't matter where you put her, a house. She likes the house, that's it. A man, he had to go to the Bet Knesset, he had to go to work, he had to go. Now, if you now come and you take the man and you put him in another scenario, now he has to get accustomed to a new job, right? To finding a job, to a new Bet Knesset, to a new this, to a new society. For him, it's much more difficult. For her, it's like you're taking the house with her and you're putting her in another house. As long as she has a four corner, she's happy with what she has. Nowadays, it could be that certain things changed also because now she also goes out. But in the olden days, a woman was in the house. So for her, it was very easy to move from one place to another. What's the big deal? You understand? So that's what. So it says again, right? We now learn in a Braita, if he's going to take a loan, right? Then imagine you have a Kohen, he's taking a loan from his wife, right? From the properties of her father, not from her money, because if not, it belonged to him, but rather from the property of her father. He's not allowed to pay it back directly. He has to pay it back through somebody else. Again, remember, we keep on suspecting that if he's going to come and see her, he might do something again. And again, he's a Kohen, she's a grusha, even though she was his wife, but that's it. Amar Rav Sheshat says Rav Sheshat, they come in front of the din, we don't pay attention to them. Rav Papa Amar Shemutu, we give them nidui, we put them in excommunication. Right? We also give them lashes. That means why? Because again, we do not want them to be together. You understand? That means we don't want them to be together because we suspect it. You understand? Nachman says, Be'aver Rabati, right? Be'aver Masechet Smachot. With their Tana, we learned the Masechet Smachot. When are these words? Shenichkar Shamin and Nisuin? Only if they got divorced from the Nisuin. But if they only got divorced from Irusin, then he's allowed to pay her directly, right? Because then, which means like this. All this that we're talking about, that they're not allowed to have a connection, they're not allowed to go to Betim together, or he's not allowed to pay her back. All these things is if they got divorced from marriage. Because when they get divorced from marriage, they had a very strong bond. So all they have to say is one word, and they already know what they're doing, they're in bed. But what happens if they were divorced from Erusin, from an engagement? There he says no problem. Why? Because Enli Bo Gaspa. There was once an Arus and Arusato that came in front of Rabbi. Yati Ravada Bar Matan come in. Ravada Bar Matan was in front of him. Uki Rava Shlucha and he put a sheikh between them. Amale Ravada Matan, Amar Nachman, why would you talk about? I thought we didn't need it. Amaleh, he says, Kachazin and the Kagais with that. He said, no. I saw them both and I saw that they're very close to each other. Meaning sometimes you could have even a fiance, like a groom, and even without getting married, they were already very, very close. So why didn't I put somebody in between them? Because I didn't want that they should be together. Some people say, look, we didn't actually put them together, a shliach between them. Why don't you put somebody? You don't need it. He says, he said, no, they were so close to each other, they do need to put somebody in between. Says the Mishnah, Mishnah Kavchet Amud Aleph 28a. These are the people, the witnesses that you're allowed to testify when they get older. When they saw that which when they were children. Meaning you have a person that he saw something when he was a child, and all of a sudden he gets older, and now you could actually listen to the testimony. A person is believed to say, this is the writings of my father. What does that mean? This is the handwritings of my father. Or this is the handwriting of my rabbi. This is the handwriting of my brother. Right, Parua? I remember that this girl came out, and she came out with the head revealed and everything. And that a certain person was coming out of the school in order to do tevilah, to eat truma. Or he used to divide with us in the Metagoren. That means again, all these things he's believed to say, even though he was a child when he saw it. And now he's testifying when he's older. So this place is a place of tum'ah that we're not sure if there's tum'ah or not. Or this is where we used to come until Shabbat, the tomb of Shabbat. But a person is not believed to say that somebody was able to go and travel through somebody's field. Or somebody they had a ma'amad misped in this place. Why? Because basically this type of a testimony, you're taking out money from somebody else. So if it's a testimony to take money from somebody else, you used to travel through this guy's field and you used to make a shortcut. That no. Because then I'm taking out money from the other guy. That I'm not believing. But if I'm just going to say that this guy was a Kohen, because I remember him coming and dividing with us in the granary, or I remember this guy coming and going to the place and taking out, how do you call it? And he used to take him out of school in order to do tevilah, to eat truma, or all these other things that you are going to be believed. Because you're not taking out money from anybody. Says the Gemara, this heter, when he's testifying, is that he's going to have another person that's a gadol also at the same time. Meaning, it's not only that right now, for sure, he's a gadol. Right now, for sure, he's already above bar mitzvah. But it has to be that he was with someone that was also a gadol. Meaning that as long as there was somebody else with him that was also a gadol, he's going to be believed. Says the Gemara, and we need the Mishnah, all these cases, to do with the ktav yad of your father, the ktav yad, meaning handwriting of your father, of your rabbi, and your brother. Why do we need all three cases? Why? Just tell me. You're believed to say this is your handwriting of your father, right? Or your brother, your father, your rabbi. Why? He says, why? If it's only me, your father, but you're always by your father. But maybe you're a rabbi, maybe not. Right? If it was only going to be your rabbi, because you're so afraid of your rabbi, so you remember his writing. Because you're so afraid of your rabbi, here you're saying what the Gemara is saying. You're more afraid of your rabbi than your father. That means you're more found by your father. You're more common by your father. You're more afraid of your rabbi. So because of that, you remember his signature because he's so avalaviv lo, but maybe not your father. If you only said about the father and the rabbi, aviv be your father because you're always by him, and the rabbi because you're afraid of him. Avalachiv, but your brother, you're not afraid of him and you're not always by him. I would say no. Since the entire concept of verifying documents is the Rabbanan, so the rabbis, which they are the Rabbanan, they believed you in the Rabbanan. Next, a person comes and when he was a child, he could say, I remember that this girl came out and she was with a veil and she had her hair, which means that she was a betula, she was a virgin, she never got married beforehand. My tama, what's the reasoning? Since the majority of women, they get married when they're betulot, right, when they're virgins, so therefore it's just like revealing something which we already know. Okay, next. That somebody was able to go outside from the school in order to do tevilah to eat truma. So says the Gemara, maybe he's a slave. If he's a slave, he also eats truma. So maybe he's a slave. Who told you he's a kohen? So says the Gemara, there's a proof to there's a proof that you're not allowed to teach your son, your slave Torah. Because here you were taking him out of the Bet Sefer, you were taking him out of the school where they're learning Torah. So for this obviously goes according to that opinion that you're not allowed to teach him Torah. If he's learning Torah in the Bet Sefer, obviously he's a Jew and he's not a slave. Okay? Says the Gemara, Velo, why you're not allowed to teach your servant Torah? Latanya, we learned in a Braita. If right now you come and you have, whether it's going to be your rabbi, right, or you borrowed money from him, or his rabbi came and he made him an apotropos, 28b, right? He made him an apotropos. Or sheniat tefillin b'fnei rabo, you put on tefillin. Or shekara shlosha psukim b'beit knesset, or you read 3 psukim in beit knesset. Harei lo yatsa lechelut, he doesn't go out. Which means these things are not a proof that he's Jewish. So therefore, how does this argues on Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi? Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says you're not allowed to teach him Torah. What are you talking about? Here, he's borrowing, right? If he comes and he borrowed money from his own servant, or he made him into his master, made him into a potropos, into the one that's like, the appointment, the one that's like the one that's in charge of all the different dealings. Or he put on tefillin in front of his rabbi, or he read 3 psukim in the Beit Knesset. He doesn't go out. So says no, hatam di ikre eved midato ki kamrina de kanai be minhag banim. Says there we're talking about that he's called an eved in the Torah, and there's no isur, so there's no hochacha that he freed him. Here, when we talk about you're not allowed to teach him Torah, is when he's still like as if say that he's going to be like the other children. So if you're going to come and you're going to put him into the Talmud Torah like all the other children, it's a problem, because then what? Is he a student? Is he a slave? Or is he his child? We don't know anymore. Okay? Next, the Mishnah said, he used to do tevilah and he used to eat truma. The truma de Rabbanan. Obviously, we're talking about truma de Rabbanan, because if it's truma doraita, we never accept the testimony of a child. So it's only truma de Rabbanan that the rabbis believed him in the Rabbanan. Or that these divide, right? Alagoren. What's alagoren on the granaries? So he comes and he says, right? What does this mean? He comes and he says, yeah, maybe he's an eved kohen. So we learned that we're not going to divide the truma to a slave unless his rabbi is with him. The Tanya was learned to the Braita. You never give to the slave unless the master's there. It means you could give, remember, the slave is allowed to eat what you eat. So if you eat truma, the slave is allowed to eat truma, but only if the master's with you can you eat. Okay, those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosef says, Yachol hu yomash yomar, he could say, in Kohen, tenuli b'shilatzi, if he's a Kohen, give it for me. In Eved Kohen, and if I'm an Eved Kohen, give it for my master. In Komosh Rabbi Yehuda, ma'alin truma le'yuchasin. So in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they used to bring up from truma to yuchasin. If you used to eat truma, they used to say you're able to get married to a Kohen, you're like a genealogy. In Komosh Rabbi Yossi, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't ma'alin truma yuchasin. So Tanya, we learned on the right. Rabbi Yosef says, Rabbi Yosef, mi'amai lo he'ati, I never testified anything in the bedin. Pam achat he'ati, once I testified, ve'elu eved le'kiuna al pi, and they brought up a Kohen to kiuna because of me. That's why he never wanted to testify. Why? Because basically he went and he said what? He used to eat truma. So they went and they said, okay, so he's a Kohen. But he wasn't a Kohen, he was an Eved Kohen. So they went and they did the mistake. Says the Gemara, do you really think that they brought him up? If an animal of a tzaddik, are you listening? An animal of a tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not bring a takala through them. Meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not bring a stumbling block even to the animal of a tzaddik. To the tzaddik kol sheken, you're going to have that the tzaddik is going to fall because he went and he made a mistake and he brought up a slave to become a kohen. Ella, you're right. They wanted to bring him up to kiuna, but they didn't at the end. So Chaza be'atre de Rabbi Yosef, the Aziv said, why? Because he saw it in the city of Rabbi Yosef, and then he went and testified in the city of Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, in the city of Rabbi Yehuda, they used to bring up from Truma to Yuchasin. The city of Rabbi Yosef, no. So he saw it in the city of Rabbi Yosef that they were giving by themselves Truma, and then he went to the city of Rabbi Yehuda, and then he was testifying, and it was a mistake, because in the other place, they wouldn't do so. Next. 2 dots. We're almost done. This place is a beta pras. What is a beta pras? Remember, beta pras means that there was a kever, there was a tombstone that it was actually buried there, that it was there, and they didn't know where it was. I mean, they got lost in the place. It's called a beta pras. So it says, my time, what's reasoning, beta pras is the Rabbanan. Once the Rabbanan, he was believed that when he was a child, he could say, here was a beta pras. The Amar of Yudam Shmuel says, you could blow, right? You could walk and blow to make sure there's no bones around. And you could go through a beta pras. What happens if it was plowed? So then it's going to be permitted. That's going to be pure. My time, what's reason? Because it's impossible that it wasn't trampled upon. Okay, so therefore, afterwards, what happens is since they went, right, they probably made it, so therefore there's no bones anymore, and therefore it's going to be kosher. Right? Then they said also, they're believed to say, Ad kan tchum Shabbat. That means they're allowed to say that until here, you're allowed to walk on Shabbat. So he says, Kasavar tchum in the Rabbanan. So obviously, he holds the tchum is the Rabbanan, not the Raita. But remember, all these things, since he was a child when he saw it, and then he's only testifying when he's a Gadol, he was only believed by the rabbis. He's not believed on the Raitas. He's only believed by the rabbis. So it says the Gemara, but he's not allowed to, he's not believed to say that obviously he cannot testify on the negative of somebody else. That means I cannot testify that you were walking through his field. And therefore you have a chazakah that you're always allowed to walk through his field. Why? Because that means I'm taking away money from him. So when I was a child, I cannot be believed to say that you were doing that. Okay, so he says over here, my time what's reasoning. We do not take out money. We learned in the right. This is what my father said. This family is Tmeah or Teorah. Do you really think that somebody's believed to say that this is a pure family or an impure family? And this mishpacha is kasher. That means there's no pgam or pasul, or there is a pgam. That means we're not talking about tahor or tameh. We're talking about kasher and pasul. So he says, "V'shachalnu b'tzitza, b'tzatza." That means they did the shalba ploni ploni. We used to give these presents to the Kohanim. So for what does that mean? That means basically that they were doing during the time of the Khatuna. So that was obviously going to be a proof, right? What is this chatzatza? We're going to see now. So it says the Gemara, only through themselves and not through anybody else. If there was an Oved Kochavim and then he converted, they're not going to be believed. Okay, so that means it's only going to be a pure Jew that's going to be believed, not the person that was a goy and he converted, or a slave and then he was free. You're not believed to say that they are believed. So Yochanan and Broka comes and he says, "Hi, what's he going on? If you're going to tell me that he's going on the Seifa, we already just said you're taking out money. But rather we're going on the Reisha. If he was a goy and then he converted, or he was a slave and he was freed, he's not going to be believed. And Yochanan and Broka says he is going to be believed. What is a machloket? Tanakama holds that since he was a goy, he wasn't in dayek. He wasn't putting his attention to it. Rabbi Yochanan Broka says no, but since he wanted to convert, he was paying attention to it. Mike tzatza, what does it mean here that he was eating the tzatza at the wedding of Ploni Leploni? So he says, if you have somebody that got married to somebody that's not proper to him, the family would come, they would bring a barrel of fruits, they would break it in the middle of the rechava, and they would say, right? Our brothers, Betty said, listen, Achinu, our brother, is getting married to somebody that's not fitting for him. And we're afraid, maybe they're going to get married to each other. So, take for yourselves a dugma, a thing, they will never, so the child is believed. Do you understand what that means? That means you're talking about here that one brother is getting married to somebody that he's not supposed to. The entire family would come, bring a barrel. Exactly. They would bring a barrel in the middle of the street and say to everybody, boom, chop the barrel in half. Our brother is getting married to somebody. We don't want our children to get mixed up with him. What would that do? Nobody would do that again. Right? So that's what they were doing. So a child was believed to say that. 100%, but that's what they would do. They would do that. By the way, you should know they actually did that happen in Gibraltar. There was a woman, right? There was a girl. She wanted to get married. No, there was another case. She wanted to get married to a goy. Listen carefully. She wanted to get married to a goy. The brother, he was very smart. He was a rabbi. He had a meeting. All the brothers and her. He sat her down. She was the only girl in the family. All the rest were boys. He sat her down. He says, you have to make the decision. You want to get married? Bechavod, get married. Right now, we do kriya. We do kriya as if you're dead. You're dead. That's it. Right now. You make the decision. It's either yes or no. She didn't do it. She was chazara b'tshuva. She got married. She's living in Eretz Yisrael. She has children. They're religious. right? I think he even learns, like not a full-time Avrech, but I'm saying he saved it. He went and he said, you do it right now, no problem. You make the decision. This is in your hand. But if it's yes, kriya.
Family condition.
We finished the second chapter, and we start Bezrat Hashem tomorrow with the third chapter.